Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for April the 12th. Today we are reading together in Numbers chapter 4. Numbers chapter 4 is going to be an unpacking of a lot of what we read yesterday in Numbers chapter 3, where we talked about the three families of Levi, the three sons of Levi, who were the points of division between the remaining Levites, those who were the descendants of Levi. They were broken into these three different groups of Gershon and Kohath and Merari. And we talked about in brief detail what their duties were concerning the tabernacle, specifically in reference to what they would do when the tabernacle was being moved as the people were migrating to their next position. Well, here in chapter 4, we're going to have an unpacking and an expansion of the details concerning what they were to do and the role that they would play. So let's read about that here in Numbers chapter 4. Numbers chapter 4. Let me see here, double check my sound real fast. There we go. All right, looks like we're good to go. Numbers chapter 4 and verse number 1. Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, among the Levites, take a census of the Kohathites by their clans and their ancestral families, men from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who is qualified to do work at the tent of meeting. The service of the Kohathites at the tent of meeting concerns the most holy objects. Whenever the camp is about to move on, Aaron and his sons are to go in, take down the screening curtain, and cover the ark of the testimony with it. They're to place over this a covering made of fine leather, spread a solid blue cloth on top, and insert its poles. They are to spread a blue cloth over the table of the presence and place the plates and cups on it, as well as the bowls and the pitchers for the drink offering. The regular bread offering is to be made on it. They are to spread a scarlet cloth over them, covering them with a covering made of fine leather, and insert the poles in the table. They are to take a blue cloth and cover the lampstand used for the light, with its lamps, snuffers, and fire pans, as well as its jars of oil by which they service it. Then they are to place it with all its utensils inside a covering made of fine leather and put them on the carrying frame. They are to spread a blue cloth over the gold altar, cover it with a covering made of fine leather, and insert its poles. They are to take all the serving utensils they use in the sanctuary, place them in the blue cloth, cover them with a covering made of fine leather, and put them on a carrying frame. They are to remove the ashes from the bronze altar and spread a purple cloth over it, the plate, and place all the equipment on it that they use in the serving. The fire pans, meat forks, shovels, and basins, all the equipment of the altar. You have to spread a covering made of fine leather over it and insert its poles. Aaron and his sons are to finish covering the holy objects and all their equipment whenever the camp is to move on. The Kohathites will come and carry them, but they are not to touch the holy objects or they will die. These are the transportation duties of the Kohathites regarding the tent of meeting. Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, has oversight of the lamp oil, the fragrant incense, the grain or the daily grain offering, and the anointing oil. He has oversight of the entire tabernacle and everything in it, the holy objects and their utensils. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, do not allow the Kohathite tribe clans to be wiped out from the Levites. Do this for them so they may live and not die when they come near the most holy objects. Aaron and his sons are to go in and assign each man his task and transportation duty. The Kohathites are not to go in and look at the holy objects as they are covered, or they will die. Verse 21, Yahweh spoke to Moses, take a census of the Gershonites, also by their ancestral families and their clans. Register men from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who is qualified to perform service, to do work at the tent of meeting. This is the service of the Gershonite clans regarding work and transportation duties. They are to transport the tabernacle curtains, the tent of meeting with its covering, and the covering made of fine leather on top of it, the screen for the entrance to the tent of meeting, the hangings of the courtyard, the screen for the entrance at the gate of the courtyard that surrounds the tabernacle and the altar, along with their ropes and all the equipment for their service. They will carry out everything that needs to be done with these items. All the service of the Gershonites, all their transportation duties, and all their other work is to be done at the command of Aaron and his sons. You are to assign them all that they are responsible to carry. This is the servant of the Gershonite clans at the tent of meeting, and their duties will be under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron, the priest. As for the Merarites, you are to register them by their clans and their ancestral families. Register men from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who is qualified to do the work of the tent of meeting. This is what they are responsible to carry as the whole of their service at the tent of meeting. The supports of the tabernacle with its crossbars, pillars, and bases, the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases, tent pegs and ropes, including all their equipment and all the work related to them. You are to assign by name the items they are responsible to carry. This is the service of the Merari clans regarding all their work at the tent of meeting under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron, and the priest. Verse 34. So Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of the community registered the Kohathites by their clans and their ancestral families, men from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who is qualified for work at the tent of meeting. The men registered by their clans numbered 2,750. These were the registered men of the Kohathite clans, everyone who could serve at the tent of meeting. Moses and Aaron registered them at Yahweh's command through Moses. The Gershonites were registered by their clans and their ancestral families, men from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who was qualified for work at the tent of meeting. The men registered by their clans and their ancestral families numbered 2,630. These were the registered men of the Gershonite clans. At Yahweh's command, Moses and Aaron registered everyone who could serve at the tent of meeting. The men of the Merarite clans were registered by their clans and their ancestral families, those from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who was qualified for work at the tent of meeting. The men registered by their clans numbered 3,200. These were the registered men of the Merarite clans. Moses and Aaron registered them at Yahweh's command through Moses. Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel registered all the Levites by their clans and their ancestral families, from 30 years old to 50 years old, everyone who was qualified to do the work of serving at the tent of meeting and transporting it. Their registered men numbered 8,580. At Yahweh's command, they were registered under the direction of Moses, each one according to his work and transportation duty, and his assignment was as Yahweh commanded Moses. And that is Numbers chapter 4. All right, so within this chapter, again, it's an expansion, and it is a lot more just written about the duties of these three individual clans. Again, the clan of Gershon, the Gershonites, their main work was the coverings of on the outside of the tabernacle complex, basically everything that was soft and pliable. And that would be what they dealt with. The Kohathites, they were responsible for the inside of the tabernacle, all of the holy furnishings and instruments. The Merarite clan, they were responsible for all the support pieces, the hard things, poles, supports, things of that nature. Now, here's what I want to focus on in this, and this is something that I have mentioned kind of in passing. I haven't really expounded upon it a lot in these discussions, and while I have noticed it, I haven't really thought about that much. I finally found a resource that I could listen to. I'm somebody that just, quite honestly, I listen to things better than I read things. I appreciate being able to listen and hear what people say. It just sticks with me more than reading does oftentimes. That's just the way I learn it, is what it is. I wish they could come out with the invention where I had a book in front of me and I can like scan it and will just read it to me. That'd be really nice. Nevertheless, I finally found a good resource from a church down in Tampa where a couple of friends of mine preach, and they were working through Numbers recently, and friend Nathan, he really brought out about these two chapters this aspect of just the picture as a whole, and it is this: it is an awesome but a dangerous reality for Israel to live so close to the presence of Yahweh. It was an awesome but a dangerous reality for them to live so close to Yahweh. That is the reason for the necessity of the Levites. They served as a buffer zone almost. They served as guardians for Yahweh's sacred and holy space, and they kept the people from getting too close. They kept the people from trespassing on sacred space that would really lead to them just being killed. We see this even throughout this text. And one of the things that I think really stands out to me from this respect, number one, is this: the term that is used in one of the words that's used in this text. This is one of the words that was in part of my preparation for the lesson I did on the priesthood, but I didn't introduce it until I had enough on my plate dealing with just three Hebrew terms: the avad, avodah, and the shamar terms of the priestly service. But there's another word here, and it is the word mishmereth. And this word, in I think only the ESV, maybe another translation or so, really bears out this aspect of this word. But one of the main ideas behind the word mishmereth is the idea of guarding sacred space, guarding the various aspects of the tabernacle. This term, mishmereth, it goes back. Oh, let me see here if I can find the very first time it's used here in the text. I think it is back in. Let me see here. It's back here in chapter 1. Let me see if I can find where I wrote it down. Yeah, chapter number 1 and verse number 53. The Levites are to camp around the tabernacle of the testimony and watch over it, or mishmereth it, so that no wrath will fall on the Israelite community. That's where this term is introduced, first of all, here in Numbers. And it's seen not only there in chapter 1 in verse number 53, but it's also found in a number of other places throughout the text. The next one, I believe, being chapter 3 in verse number 7. It is translated here: they are to perform duties for him and the entire community. Again, there's a range of ways that the word could be understood. But again, one of the main words or main understandings being the guard duty that the Levites would participate in. You can see it as well in chapter 3, verse 28. There were 8,600. This is concerning the Kohathites. There were 8,600 responsible for the duties of the sanctuary, or for the guarding of the sanctuary is another way that could be understood. You see it again in chapter 3 and verse 32, another time in chapter 3, verse 36. It's also in chapter 3, verse 38. Let me see here. It is also in chapter 4. It is in verse 27, verse 28, verse 31, verse 32. All these instances, the word here again, mishmereth, could be understood as guarding, and there's a lot of that meaning behind this word, even if translations don't always render it as such. Whenever they render it just as simply being duties or responsibilities, the idea behind that is there to guard this. Why are they to guard this? Well, again, we've seen it even within this text, even concerning the second thing I'll focus on, even concerning the Kohathites. Remember, the Gershonites took care of the soft stuff, the stuff that could be folded, curtains and things of that nature. The Merarites focused on the hard things, the support beams and such. But the Kohathites, they had an especially important responsibility to take care of the most holy objects, the furnishings, the different things that were found inside the tent of meeting. But they were not even allowed to see them and touch them themselves. It was supposed to be Aaron and his sons that would go in and lay or take the ark, and they were to cover the ark with I believe it's described as fine leather or something of that nature, to cover it up. And they were then to put the poles through the holes, and then the Kohathites could come in and pick up the ark and these other furnishings and carry them out. They got to carry them, but they could not even see them or touch them. Why? Because that is how holy and special and sacred these furnishings were. So if that's the way Yahweh felt about his own priesthood seeing or touching these things, then how much more for the people themselves? Again, how awesome a blessing to be so close to the presence of Yahweh, but how dangerous too. How dangerous to be so close to something so holy when these people were anything but holy. What an awesome responsibility the Levites played in being the guardians of God's sacred and holy space and making sure that the wrong people did not come into the sacred space. I mentioned how the Levites were not assigned with the military men, and that's true. They were not involved in the military census, but that doesn't mean these weren't warriors. I think later on in the gospel in the historical writings of the Old Testament moving forward, you see some Levites getting down and killing people and punishing them for coming into sacred space. Why? Because it was a big deal. You could not dishonor or disrespect or profane holy space. So yes, they were spiritual leaders, but they were also men of action as well. And I hope that stands out to us as we read throughout this text, just how important it was for the transportation of these things, but also the fact that they were guarding these things. They were making sure not just anybody could come around them, and they were making sure that God's holy and sacred space and things were not violated in any way, shape, or form. And certainly that should stand out to us how important it is ourselves being temples to make sure that we are not profaning ourselves and allowing things that ought not be in God's presence to creep in. I appreciate you tuning in for this reading on this Wednesday, and I hope you'll do so again tomorrow as we read together in Numbers chapter 5, which has a number of different aspects to it. It's not just one subject matter. There's isolation of the unclean. There's compensation for wrongdoing. There's the jealousy ritual that is given at the end of the text. This is that kind of weird thing we talked about. I believe if this is correct. Yes, this is that weird thing about the drinking the bitter water with the possibility of someone having cheated on their spouse. Go back a little bit whenever they made the golden calf, and Moses took the calf and ground it up and threw it in the water, made the people drink out of it. We talked about that some. That's this text here in Numbers chapter 5. So I'll probably mention that tomorrow and reference back to that as well. But for tonight, I hope you'll join us at 7 p.m. for our song, scripture, and supplication service. Always one of the most encouraging nights of the month, and hope that you could come and be encouraged with us. Again, thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everyone. Take care, and may God bless you.